You have invited me today and on Wednesday to think together with you about how to best approach gay, lesbian, transgender, and genderqueer individuals. Here is how I suggest to read this passage in light of the encounter with LGBTQI people, some of which might choose to live non-heteronormatively. Jesus approaches the blind man. He sees him and he talks to him. Emulating Jesus in John 9 starts with seeing LGBTQI people as what they are and to talk to them rather than about them. This requires a little preparation, empathy, patience, love. Try for a moment to walk in their shoes as Jesus tries to imagine how to relate to the lifelong blind person. How might it feel to live a life that in a distinctive aspect is not mainstream, without having had a choice about that? Because this is what both the blind men from birth and we LGBTQI folks claim. We found ourselves this way. None of us was asked. We did not choose our feelings, no less the color of our hair, of our skin, or our eyes. We found ourselves confronted with our own head-handedness. If that seems dubious to you, consider for a moment how you would feel if others asked you, "Since when did you know that you are heterosexual? How was it when you realized that you are heterosexual? What was it like to come out? Is it true that all heterosexuals are married? I feel so sorry for you that you're heterosexual. Can I pray for you?" That is comparable to the smokescreen that the disciples put up as they cannot muster the strength of engaging with the blind-born man. Jesus challenges those thoughts with a sentence fragment. Neither him nor his parents have sinned, but in order that the works of God will be revealed. What if we could encounter each other through this lens? Here's a person. How might I best act in a way? How might we as a church best act in a way so that the works of God will be revealed in him, in them? This, friends, is the Lenten practice of our gospel for this week, that we would perceive each other's, however flawed human nature, each other's straightness, queerness, sexuality, or asexuality, binary or non-binary identity, each other's status as married or as single, for a moment foremost as occasions for us in order that the works of God will be revealed on us. That might be a high bar to perceive each other in the at-handedness, in the here and now. And it sure is loaded with so many situational challenges today. Likewise, in our gospel text, one loaded element is the lifelong nature of the man's disability, in contrast with the encounter's timing, specifically on a Sabbath. Consequently, once the blind man is healed, the authorities in all things law, including Sabbath law, take issue with this timing. And with this, we turn from the action part to the ensuing discussion. But it was Sabbath on that day. What is the role of the law in our faith journey in light of the at-handedness of others I was just talking about? Jesus heals the blind without rejecting the law. Instead, he puts a more creative spin on the law when he argues out of a sense of urgency. His point is, if we take serious what presents itself to us, then we must work the works of the one who sent me as long as it is day. The night approaches, and nobody can work then. Does Jesus simply ignore the Sabbath law? The gospel sure is somewhat spicy here. But it was on the Sabbath when Jesus mixed the paste and opened his eyes. One of the fascinating discoveries in biblical law is how to determine its exact meaning. Here, Jesus balances the at-handedness of our lives on the one side with the Sabbath on the other side. What is Jesus' interpretation of the law? When Jesus heals the blind, his action arguably is informed by a deep understanding of Sabbath legislation. What makes Sabbath law so salacious in the case of the blind-born is that it is essentially social justice law, specifically about debt remission. In the foreground, the Sabbath is about a day of rest, off work. You shall keep the Sabbath, we learn in the Ten Commandments. However, what then follows is the actually inflammable matter. This law applies also to all your servants, including even the animals as co-creatures. This law applies also to all your servants because God himself rested on the seventh day. The fuel for conflict is that the Sabbath law is a relief specifically for the servants, including all the animals. In this very line of thought, shortly after the Ten Commandments, the slavery law in Exodus 21 boldly applies Sabbath law to a contentious point of social justice in Judah. Now counting 7 years, not 7 days, slavery law applies the Sabbath law to bankruptcy, namely to loan forgiveness. Personal debt that could lead to become an indentured slave must be forgiven after 6 years. Personal debt that could lead to an indentured slavery status of an impoverished person must be forgiven in the 7th year. And that's the actual thing behind the Sabbath law. As a creditor in the case of bankruptcy, your debtor, you are allowed 6 years in which the debtor and his family must work as a slave towards the balance they owe you. After 6 years, however, you must let them go. If they would remain slaves, after 6 years, their reputation, their honor would be destroyed. Creditors might thus not have liked the Sabbath law. We see what exactly to allow to do on a Sabbath and what not is a vivid discussion in Judaism. Sabbath law is much about social justice, and by nature, thus, urgency is implied. To Jesus, the Sabbath must by definition be liberating for both the enslaved debtor and a blind man alike. Someone born blind has served their time. They deserve to be freed. What better day to do just that than a Sabbath? Consequently, if today I would be talking to you about how to best interpreting the Sabbath, we would have to tackle not so much our weekly rhythm, than the theme of social justice and bankruptcy law. How might we in our contexts best negotiate questions about equality and debt with social standing at a moment when someone lands on economically hard times? What does social justice mean in a country with a legacy of chattel slavery when biblical law limits indentured slavery to 6 years to safeguard the slave's honor as a citizen? Friends, in this legal discourse, Jesus balances the intention of establishing justice through Sabbath law with the at-handedness of the born blind man. Notably, both the incredible tenderness in Jesus' encounter with the blind man and his sense of utmost urgency to act, which the Sabbath law underscores. We must work the deeds of the one who sent us. There is no time to lose. The darkness, death, is coming for all of us. This is my wish for you, for us, as the gospel entrusts us as disciples of Jesus. May we, in our Lenten journey with Jesus, err on the at-handedness of those around us. May we, in this season of Lent, rather than using those around us as an opportunity to discuss about their potential sins, go creatively about illuminating this world for those that experience it as dark. May we in these weeks become ever more aware of the urgency of our task, how we might best work the deeds of the one who sent us. Amen.